Have you ever noticed how you can spend 3 hours scrolling TikTok, watching YouTube, or chatting with friends without even realizing how much time has passed? But the moment you open your lecture notes, 20 minutes feels like the longest 20 minutes of your life. Suddenly you're thirsty, your room needs cleaning, you remember a message you forgot to reply to, and checking Instagram somehow becomes more important than the assignment that's due tomorrow. Most students think this happens because they're lazy or they don't have enough discipline. But that's not what's happening at all. Your brain isn't avoiding studying. It's avoiding the way you're studying. Once you understand the difference, studying can become something you actually enjoy instead of something you constantly try to escape. During my first year, I genuinely believed productive students were just built differently. Every semester, I'd download a new timetable, color code my study schedule, promise myself that this time I'd stay consistent, and by Wednesday, I'd already fallen behind. I thought I had a motivation problem, but I was wrong. The students who studied consistently weren't forcing themselves to sit at a desk every day. They had unknowingly created the right conditions for their brains to enjoy studying. Once I understood what those conditions were, studying stopped feeling like a battle I had to win every single day. Before we go any further, let me save you from one of the biggest productivity myths on the internet. If you think becoming a better student means forcing yourself to study for 6 or 8 hours every day, you've already lost. Marathon study sessions don't make you love studying. They usually make you hate it. The students who seem addicted to studying aren't studying longer than everyone else. They're spending more time in a mental state that psychologists call flow, and that's what makes studying feel rewarding instead of painful. The easiest way to understand this is to imagine that every time you study, your brain is operating in one of 3 mental zones: anxiety, boredom, or flow. The problem is that most students spend almost all their time in the first 2 zones and wonder why they can't stay motivated. Let's start with the first zone because this is where studying usually becomes frustrating before it becomes anything else. Anxiety zone, and you've probably experienced it more times than you can count. You open a difficult chapter, start reading, and after 10 minutes you realize nothing is making sense. You read the same paragraph again and again, but somehow you understand even less than before. Then suddenly your brain decides that cleaning your room, checking your phone, or making food is the most important thing in the world. It feels like you're being lazy, but that's not what's happening. Your brain is trying to escape something that feels overwhelming. When the challenge is far beyond your current understanding, studying stops feeling rewarding and starts feeling like punishment. Your brain doesn't see the task as an opportunity to learn. It sees it as a threat. But avoiding anxiety doesn't mean you've automatically created the perfect study environment. There's another zone that looks completely different but causes the same problem: losing interest and wanting to stop. And this is where many university students get trapped without even realizing it. It's called boredom zone, and it happens when your brain feels like it already knows the information. You've gone through the same lecture slides several times, highlighted half the textbook, and everything looks familiar. The problem is that familiarity creates a feeling of knowing, but it doesn't always mean you actually understand the topic. Your brain isn't being challenged anymore, so it loses interest. This is where active recall becomes important. Instead of just looking at information and thinking, I remember seeing this before, you force your brain to bring the answer back without help. Close your notes and try explaining the concept in your own words. Answer practice questions. Test yourself before checking the solution. The moment your brain has to think, struggle, and solve problems, studying becomes more engaging because it feels like a challenge instead of a repetitive task. That brings us to the third zone, flow zone. This is where studying starts to feel surprisingly different. Flow is the state where you're challenged, but not overwhelmed. You don't know every answer, but you know enough to keep moving forward. You're solving questions, making mistakes, fixing your mistakes, and slowly improving. Then suddenly you look at the clock and realize an hour has passed. This is the feeling students describe when they say, I accidentally studied for 2 hours. But here's the important part. You don't enter flow because you love studying. You start loving studying because you've entered flow. Most students think enjoyment comes first and progress comes second. They think they need to feel motivated before they start studying. But the opposite is usually true. Progress creates enjoyment. When your brain can see that you're learning, improving, and getting better, it starts wanting to continue because the activity feels rewarding. The good news is that flow isn't something you're born with. You can create the conditions that make it happen. The first thing is studying at the right difficulty. If the work is too difficult, you'll enter anxiety. If the work is too easy because you've already seen it many times, you'll enter boredom. The sweet spot is choosing work that feels like solving a puzzle. You should feel challenged enough to stay interested, but capable enough to keep making progress. The second thing is making your progress visible. One reason video games keep people playing is because they constantly show progress. You complete missions, unlock achievements, and see yourself getting better. Studying usually doesn't give you that feeling unless you create it yourself. Track the topics you finish. Keep a checklist of completed tasks. Count the practice questions you solve. Every small win gives your brain evidence that you're moving forward. And progress is surprisingly addictive. The final thing is learning when to stop. Most students study until they are completely exhausted, then wonder why they don't want to study again tomorrow. But if every study session ends with stress and frustration, your brain starts connecting studying with suffering. Instead, try it while you still have some interest left. Stop after you understand a difficult concept. Finish after solving a challenging question. Leave your brain with the feeling that there is something exciting to continue tomorrow. It's the same reason you can't wait to watch the next episode of a good series. You stop while you still wanted more. So if studying always feels painful, ask yourself which zone you're in. If everything feels impossible, you're probably in anxiety, and you need to make the challenge smaller. If everything feels boring because you've only been rereading notes, you're probably stuck in boredom, and you need to start testing yourself. But if the challenge matches your ability and you're actively forcing your brain to think, you'll enter flow, the one mental zone where studying stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling genuinely satisfying. So don't try to become addicted to studying. Try to become addicted to making progress. Because once your brain connects studying with improvement instead of frustration, you won't need nearly as much motivation to open your books. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more practical study strategies that actually work in university. And check out the other videos on the channel to learn more ways to study smarter and stay focused.